ẹ̀kọ́ ló láyé táwa yìí sẹ́, ẹ̀kọ́ dára púpọ̀, ẹ̀kọ́ ló láyé táwa yìí sẹ́, ẹ̀kọ́ ló ń gbé ní dẹni gíga, ẹ̀kọ́ ló ń gbé ní dépò ọlá, ẹ̀dá kúnyé ẹ̀yin òbí wa, lẹ́bàá lówó kẹjọ kẹtọ́ wa, ẹ̀kọ́ ló ń gbé ní dẹni gíga, ẹ̀kọ́ ló ń gbé ní dépò ọlá, ẹ̀dá kúnyé ẹ̀yin òbí wa, lẹ́bàá lówó kẹjọ kẹtọ́ wa, ẹ̀dá kúnyé ẹ̀yin òbí wa, lẹ́bàá lówó kẹjọ kẹtọ́ wa.
At the Okoli Law Group, we specialize in producing justice. If you or a loved one in the Atlanta metro area is facing serious criminal charges, then you need serious legal representation.
The Okoli Law Group is here for you. The Okoli Law Group is here for us.
The Okoli Law Group, serious legal representation.
Peace, fam. Thank you so much for joining. Once again, thank you so much for joining. We had an interesting night last night. Again, we had a very, very interesting night, interesting show last night, but I enjoyed the conversation. Do me a favor, hit that like button again, please. Hit that like button. Also, make sure you share and make sure you subscribe. I will greatly appreciate it. Before we get started, have a couple of announcements. No chaos today. Announcement number one. We are rolling to Nigeria. Dinus, such a hard worker. I could be where I need to work even harder. I'm not working hard enough. Again, I'm not working hard enough. We are rolling to Nigeria. August 4th through the 13th. August 4th through the 13th. Dinus, when you going back to Liberia? I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I need to get back. I missed the palm butter stew. I missed the palm butter stew. I need to get back to not Nigeria. I need to get back to Liberia and get me some palm butter stew. There's a Liberian restaurant here in Atlanta. They have palm butter wings. A little pricey, but off the chain. Again, a little pricey, but off the chain. Again, it's palm butter wings. So, restaurant here in Atlanta. True, I don't know what this question is, but Nigeria is the backbone of Africa. Absolutely. Nigeria is the largest economy of the Black race. Nigeria is the blackest country on the planet. So you can't count out Nigeria. See, guys like this are the problem. People like this are the problem. Nigeria died a long time ago. Only oil is holding it to unravel completely. Like, why would you want Nigeria to fail? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you want Nigeria to fail? Makes absolutely no sense to me. The amount of opportunities that are in Nigeria, it being the largest, blackest economy on the planet. Why would you want Nigeria to fail? It makes absolutely no sense to me. So once every blue moon, once in a while, I have to do a show on the reality is Nigeria. Is it going anywhere? You could complain about the name Nigeria. You could complain about Flora Shaw naming Nigeria. You could complain about how, it's a creation of the British. it's a creation of the British, but Nigeria isn't going anywhere. There will be no Biafra. There will be no Oduduwa Republic. There will only be one Nigeria, and those are the facts. So why people why, especially Black people, why a Black person will want to see Nigeria fail, it makes absolutely no sense. How can you not find or see the value in Nigeria? Biafra's not happening. Oduduwa Republic's not happening. It's not. Just let it go. It's not going to happen. For one Nigeria. Only one Nigeria. And we get these pessimistic people who call into the show, and Nigeria is not perfect. Again, Nigeria is not perfect. There are issues that need to be fixed. Again, Nigeria is not perfect. There are issues that need to be fixed. But if Nigeria collapses, all of Africa collapses, and the Black race is finished. Period. A lot of people say, Black America is where it's at. I'm sorry. Black America is comfortable here in America. I'm sorry. The average Black American is just comfortable here in America. That's just what it is. Nigeria is the future. Nigeria is not only the future of Africa, it's the future of the Black race. And those are the facts. You see what happened in South Africa. Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso got a long way to go. But I applaud the direction they're going in. I applaud the direction Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. I applaud the direction they're going in. Absolutely. I fully support it. But Nigeria is not going anywhere. Nigeria is still the king of Africa and of the Black race. Guys, links in the chat room. Link is in the chat room. If you disagree, why do you think Nigeria can move the Black race forward and not Black America's dynasty? Black Americans are too focused on getting Joe Biden reelected every 4 years. Black America is very, very comfortable here in America. Black America has reached its apex. We're just on cruise control here in America. It's just the reality. It's what it is. Black America is very comfortable here in America. And right now, Black America is trying to figure out a way to get Joe Biden reelected. Sleepy Joe Biden. Black America is not an indigenous ran country by Black people. Nigeria is a Black owned and ran country. Go ahead, Elvis.
All right, Donis. I agree with you to an extent, right? Especially what you just said. And I get in arguments with South Africans all the time. They say their country is more developed than Nigeria. They're the best in Africa. And I tell them, I say, look, Nigeria is purely a Black country. You guys were pretty well developed before the end of apartheid. So the white man had a hand in developing South Africa. They have a chokehold on your economy. You know, they have a chokehold on the land, you know, ownership. So I respect Nigeria more, even though Nigeria is quote unquote less developed than South Africa. But to the Nigerian question, look, I think a third of the population in Nigeria is ineffective, because of religion and other things. So Nigeria is not working with its full might. You know, a large swath of its population is undereducated or not educated at all.
Elvis, your phone like went low. It died out. I don't know what happened to volume.
Yeah, I just have my headphones in, so maybe I
No,
should
go. There you
disconnect
go.
it.
Go ahead. There you go.
Yeah, I'm saying like a large swath of the population is undereducated or not educated at all. So they're not working with a full deck in terms of the human resource that nation has. And I agree with you. Nigeria is the future of Africa, especially black sub-Saharan Africans. And they've been kind of sluggish. And I think the East Africans, like the Kenyans and the Ugandans, they're starting to, get a foothold on the continent. But I think Nigeria should be far ahead of where they are now. And I always have fond memories of them during our wars. And I think in terms of entertainment and influence on the continent, especially in West Africa, they've been doing, a lot of great things over the years, but still they're being held back by bad leadership, tribalism, corruption. So those things are easy to pinpoint, but to fix them is almost impossible. It takes a whole new mentality. It takes a whole new breed of leadership and a young generation coming up who respects integrity, who respect innovation and foresightedness. So I think for Nigeria to move forward, you need a great deal of the population in the north, especially, to come on board, to be educated, to have a single purpose. Because, like you said, the world is depending on Nigeria, but also in concert with African Americans in the United States. If Nigeria and Black America can work together, I think a lot of innovation, a lot of know-how can be shared between those two, people, and can push the Black race forward. I'll leave it there for now. Pass the mic.
Oh, go ahead, Captain.
Peace to everybody on the panel.
Captain, what's going on? What's going on in Illinois? Y'all still voting blue no matter who?
You know Chicago go vote blue no matter who. They're supposed to be having a DNC here in a couple of weeks, actually.
Yeah, I think they're. I think your boy Mayor, what's his name, Brandon Johnson. That is it. Is that his name,
Yeah,
the mayor?
yeah,
I think he's like putting the ban to people protesting at the DNC.
yeah, yeah. He's gonna try to quell as much what he would see as political unrest as possible because he don't want nobody messing up his chances of going to the White House or nothing like
Right.
that.
Go ahead.
All right. What I had to say about the topic was Nigeria is the giant of Africa, and I do believe that Nigeria is the future of Africa. However, I got one question. Like, how is Nigeria going to, you know, how they gonna how they gonna basically spread their influence around Africa other than Afro beats? Like it seems like they can't get, Boko Haram under control in northern Nigeria. But like in order to be like a quintessential example for a leader nation, you got to be able to defend. Like you have to be able to, stomp out terrorists, you know, that going crazy. It's 30,000 Boko Haram. I believe I heard that's the number. That's a lot of people. That's a small town, So I do believe that Nigeria is the future. There's a lot of good things come out of Nigeria. I do believe that if Nigerians and Black Americans work together, we can really take Africa to the next level. Because there's a lot of bright minds that come from both nations, and that's not to neglect any of the other nations in Africa, West Africa in particular. My wife is Ghanaian, and she feels some type of way that you always big up in Nigeria. So I agree with most of what y'all say today. I just wanted to add that topic there.
All right, cool. By Afro, go ahead.
Hello, Dynast.
Hello.
Hello. Well, where do we begin? Very interesting point, because when you're looking at Nigeria, specifically the two largest groups, this is the Black population in the Americas. And I mentioned that in the private chat. Igbo people, Yoruba, that is the Americas. Igbo people primarily in the United States and the islands, and Yoruba to Yoruba's Brazil. Even now, Yoruba is spoken in Bahia, where the Baianos live in northern Brazil. They speak Yoruba, they look Yoruba. And not to take away from your topic, if we can also speak about Juju, if you can do a live about Juju, that would be great.
Okay, go
That would be
ahead.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Just to continue, what I think Kashta Nova said, one thing with Africa, unlike the Americas, we are building with the indigenous population. You see what happened in the Americas, what happened to the native population. They were wiped out. By disease, yes, and alcoholism. Primarily, it was disease and alcoholism. Everyone else was basically interbred into primarily European and the African slave population. Also, the 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, they also owned slaves as well. So Africa doesn't have that issue. Africa has to grow, but at the same time has to take into account its history, which is its people. We can't just go in and mow down villagers. That's not going to happen in Africa, like what happened with the native population in the Americas. Plus, let's not forget, all of these African countries, many of these are former empire, British Empire, now Commonwealth. These are very brand new sovereign nations. I think Nigeria is sometime in the 1970s before it became sovereign. And then, of course, the situation with, of course, Biafra. I do believe there is a possibility, because Igbo people did fight for independence. Win or lose, Igbo people are going to fight, are going to, revolutionary. Oh, and fun fact, Dynas, Israel and the Vatican fully supported Biafra. It was the British that were causing problems, because it would be in the British best interest for there to be one Nigeria. You can't have just Nigeria and Biafra. It's in their best interest to have one. Also, when we keep speaking Boko Haram is northern Nigeria. There's also the religious component, because Igbo people are Christian, hardcore. And within Igbo people, half are Catholic, the other half are Protestant, with the Protestant majority being Presbyterian. From what I know, Yoruba people are mixed Christian and Muslim. I personally have never met a Muslim Yoruba person. I only know Catholic Yoruba people.
I know. My Kabi, he's Muslim. And
well, good. That's good to know. Good to know. And then, of course, Fulani Hausa people, they are Muslim. They are, that's what I understand. They are Muslim. And a lot of, let's straightforward, be real, let's be honest. A lot of these issues in Nigeria, Boko Haram, all of these honor killings, all of these situations, it is primarily northern Nigeria. I just know a little bit about Kaduna and Maiduguri, and of course, Kano. My mother was just there, Kano. So yeah, a lot of us all know northern Nigeria, but if there's religious conflict, there's tribal conflict, it's et cetera, et cetera. And plus, the indigenous population of Nigeria is you. So you're basically playing two fronts. In the United States, you have the quote unquote, the European, Black African slave, and then the Native American population. Africa is all just one that. So you're having to adjust and grow and move and mature, build an economy in a sovereign nation that just became sovereign like 50 years ago. It's easy for the United States to make all these claims, but the United States also had a 200-year head start before 1789, before the signing of the Constitution. The first Black African slave was Jamestown, that's 1619. And even before then, there were many colonies. They all just failed. Jamestown was just the first successful one. That's 1619. Present day, that's 400 years. And and then there's 1776, the start of the revolution, 1789, the signing of the Constitution. There's been plenty of time for the America to grow and have time to fall back. That's not occurring in Africa. Africa is simultaneously looking to keep its history, which is time immemorial. Igbo land is time immemorial. Yoruba people are time immemorial. There's no starting and stopping. This is forever from the beginning. And then at the same time, modernity, embracing modernity and moving forward. Also, fun fact, one of the reasons why Igbo people and Yoruba, not to forget them, but Igbo people, one of the reasons why Igbo people are very successful is because we embrace modernity. We are a very liberal group. Case in point, the book Things Fall Apart. Chinua Achebe, he made it clear that Igbo people, you have to learn English. Point blank simple. There's no getting around that. For us to succeed, move forward, you have to learn English. There is a reason why Things Fall Apart is written in English. And the book is parallels or is moves from Homer's The Odyssey. It parallels the Odyssey and it's written in English, but with Igbo history. We understand these things. We understand and embrace modernity. But at the same time, Igbo people have to deal with Boko Haram. And that situation, we have a lot going on. It's quite complex, Dynast. I shall yield.
Okay, let me just come in here for a second. Just not to correct you, but just to give you a little information. You mentioned Maiduguri. Maiduguri is a city in Borno State, which is in the north. People mistake Maiduguri for a state. But just to say this, I think you hit a point. And the north, again, not saying that there are, because what is his name? Dangote, I think he's from Kano. His grandfather, Ibrahim Dantata, was also very wealthy. So there are some quote unquote northern Nigerians or House of Fulanese who are very successful and wealthy and have started businesses and have done well. But the name Boko Haram just basically means that Western education is, forbidden or prohibited. And I think, like you're saying, just opposing that with Igbo culture, where education and modernity and things that would bring enlightenment to the people is embraced more so in Yoruba and Igbo cultures. In the North, people are fighting against Western civilization and Western education, and they want to Islamicize the northern part of the country. And there's been reports that even governors and ministers from the North is supporting Boko Haram covertly. So it's like you guys are living in two different countries, and the North have more power. They have more people. They pretty much dictate the political, swing of the country. So it's a country that's fighting against itself. You have one side of the country who's fighting, maybe towards progress, and you have another who wants to be conservative and stay in the Islamic, confines of the religion. So I think that's the biggest issue. You have two separate groups of people who have different religion, different ideologies, and thereby, when you really look at it, the North is really holding Nigeria back because there's such a large swath of the population. And when it comes to politics, they dominate politics. They dominate the military, the police force. So people like the Igbos, who I tend to, align myself with, because I think my people in they, they have similar ideologies. They're not going to be dominated by any other group of people. And to be under these people rule, where you have a great candidate like Peter Obi, who could have been a great president, but because of tribalism, because of this whole since Agui Orenzi coup, and when they killed Tafawa Balewa from the north, there was like this big, grudge that was set, against the Igbos and the House of Fulanese. That Igbo person would never be president in Nigeria. That was something that was said a very long time ago. So they can never support an Igbo president. And without the support of the North, it'll be hard for an Igbo man to be president in Nigeria. So the reality is there's this schism between these two groups, especially the Igbos and the House of Fulanese, and they feel marginalized because the Yoruba tends to align with the House of Fulanese because a lot of them are Muslim, and they're more friendly with the North. So I think for Nigeria to move forward, the North and the South have to come together. and to erase that religious divide is going to be almost impossible. So that's why I don't think Nigeria would really lead a charge. I think they might be usurped by the eastern bloc of countries like Uganda and Tanzania and maybe even Rwanda coming into play. But I think they need to pick up that by bringing the North into the fold and really becoming one nation with a common interest, or else they're going to be left behind by other countries. I'll pass the mic.
Elvis, then maybe secession is better then. If there's just so much difference, the Americas is more nationalistic. Like Africa is ethnicity, tribe. But in the Americas, it makes complete sense for Puerto Rican, which is a nation. It makes sense for them to see themselves as an ethnicity because they're a mix with the Spanish, the Taino, the native population, and Black African. So the Americas is new and they go by nation. But Africa, like I said, is time immemorial. These tribes are not going to go anywhere. These
May I say something?
cultures. Okay, I'll be quiet. I'll yield.
Because I understand where you're coming from, but it's almost like fictitious. That's why I don't believe Nigeria is going to lead it. Because realistically speaking, you have the AU, similar to the Europeans have the EU, and uh, ECOWAS is becoming more divided. And Nigeria is one of the main reasons why it has become more divided. It didn't play a role as the big brother of West Africa, similar to Kenya playing the big role of East Africa, trying to make peace amongst their different branches that are like for like try to pull away. I think that even if you have succession, you're going to eventually through the AU, EU, or ECOWAS or whatever union, you're going to eventually be working with the same different tribes. So the logic of secession is kind of uh, it doesn't really make sense. It's better you guys have more regional uh, political power, which I think Nigeria a couple of years back when I was watching news, they were promoting regional. What's it called? What's it called? There's a certain word that they were using for decentralizing governmental power, something like that. I forgot the name of it, but that's what I believe Nigeria should be doing and trying to create peace in West Africa. But I don't see them doing that. I see them as one of the key people of the reason why today's West Africa is more divided.
No, go ahead, Ayo. Well, yeah, then I'll let Biafra respond. Go ahead, Ayo.
Yeah, I think everyone is making a lot of sense so far on the panel. Nigeria is never going to be perfect, and I don't know that the different groups disintegrating is going to help anyone, because by and large numbers help, and you can't really build by dividing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a very proud Yoruba man. I love my culture and I love my people, and it's important to me for my people to still have a say in how they want to govern themselves and how they want to progress. And I think most Nigerians feel that way. But there's a way we can achieve that without necessarily blowing up the union, because if we do, our overall our manpower, our numbers, our influence globally will diminish. So having said that, it's kind of unfortunate because it does seem like it's just a very few elites that are kind of holding that country back, because by and large, most people want the same thing. We want progress. I think even in the North, unfortunately, they seem to be dragging the country back, not because
Fuck Nigeria. Fuck Nigeria.
Go ahead.
Not because they're bad people or they're not progressive. They just, unfortunately, I would, venture to say they've just had very bad and selfish leaders who haven't brought their community into modern times. Now, that may change. I don't think there's ever been any time that I can remember where a lot of Northerners, Northern youth, are as vocal as they currently are. So something is happening up there. Things are changing. They're not as docile and as agreeable with their leaders as they've always been. So solutions, how do we move forward? I think regional government would be great. I don't see that happening just because we would have to completely dismantle the system we currently have, and that's going to be costly. There are going to be vested interests, both locally and internationally, that feel, it wouldn't benefit them. I think on paper, we do have a federal system, which in some ways can be fine-tuned to deliver the same result as, a regional government, in that instead of, regions, we're supposed to have states determining how they want to progress. And, obviously states for a certain region can all decide to move in the same direction, or embark upon the same kind of projects, and everyone feels like at least they're being heard, and things are going in the direction they want. So if there's going to be any change at all, I think there just needs to be a retooling of federating units. We all need to sit at a table and agree on the direction. I know there's a lot of beef recently in the South between the two primary groups, but my take is, I think we have a lot more in common than either side would like to admit. I think we're both capitalist in our ideology. I think we're both pro-education. We're both pro-modernity. I don't know that the North is necessarily any different. I just feel the image that everyone knows of them is they're more theocratic in the way they move, and that may be a problem, because it just seems like it kind of slows things down somewhat. So
you don't know Jack.
So I feel like we can definitely retool the current system we have to work for everyone. That's going to take a visionary leader. I'm happy. I'm not happy with the leader we currently have. I am happy with some of his ministers and some of the changes they're trying to implement. But I think foundationally, we just have there's such a rot in the system that we just need a visionary leader to come in, and it can't just be a leader who has good intentions. It has to have.
May I ask a question to you?
Yeah, it has to be someone with political clout. Peter Obi, yes, I wanted him to win, but I don't know that he would have been able to do very much. He just doesn't have the political clout required to move the needle with the big players in the country. I think Tinubu does have the clout, but I just don't think he's politically motivated to do the right thing for whatever reason. I don't know. It's almost like his hands are tied somewhat. I don't see anyone in the North currently who could step in and right the ship. So, I am optimistic, but there's a lot of work to do.
Maybe El Rufai from the North.
Can I ask you a question?
El Rufai's he almost seems like the Antichrist. He's a very smart, shrewd guy. I don't want to go into any details, but if there's a really good I don't want to say documentary, but there's a really good what's the word? There's a really good segment on him on YouTube by David Hundain, that journalist. He's very shrewd, and a lot of the reason a lot of intellectuals like him is because he's able to mask his malevolence with his intellect, and but you need to look at his actions, especially when
trust me, I know who he is. I just brought up that name. He was cleansing the Christians in, I think, what is it, Kaduna or Kasina?
Yeah, the guy is malevolent. He's not a good leader. We certainly don't want anyone like El Rufai, in my opinion.
Well, Biafra, you want to respond to Prince P. Lee? Go ahead, Biafra.
Oh no, I'm just listening. I shall yield.
Okay, go ahead. Royal Image, go ahead.
Yeah, with the title, if Nigeria dies, the entire continent of Africa dies.
Nigeria and on its own it has power, but within its own there's no power, right? They haven't set up themselves to be in a position that everybody thinks they should be in or want them to be in, and there's nothing that Nigeria itself is doing that's holding Africa for it. If it dies, that the continent is also going to die. So I'm not sure what you're trying to say. If you guys can clarify why, if Nigeria dies, the entire continent dies.
Because Nigeria is the economic engine.
But what is Nigeria doing for the rest of the continent?
There's something my
Oh,
father.
Nigeria is producing a lot of oil.
It's not just oil, it's the people, it's the tribe, it's the group. My father said, wherever you go in the world, you will find an Igbo man. Even in Antarctica, Igbo people are everywhere. There is a mindset.
Let's stay in Africa. I just want to know what Nigeria.
No, I am saying in Africa. When we're discussing these Nigeria, we're speaking of a sovereign nation. Nigeria is a sovereign nation, but the tribes, the ethnicity, the bloodline has existed since time immemorial.
All of Africa.
Yes. So when we're discussing a group that has such a prevalent place over the course of 2,000 years of history, it is always Nigeria. And when we say Nigeria,
all of Africa has that over 2,000 years.
One second, let me pick it back up what you said.
Not when it comes to moving about and the extension and leaving Mother Africa. There is Africa, the land. We now have sovereign nations, which are again only 50 years old. But when you're speaking Nigeria,
60-something, Ghana is older than Nigeria.
When you're speaking Nigeria,
who told you Ghana is in his 50s?
when you speak of Africa, sovereign nations is second, because we cannot speak of Africa like we do in the Americas.
True.
Sovereign nations are second. Tribe, ethnicity comes first. Your group comes first. That's how you identify. That's where you're from. Of course.
Biafra, can I come in here real quick, please?
No, well, I'm trying to let Biafra finish. I'm trying to go ahead, Biafra.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Dinas. Thank you. So when we're saying that if Nigeria does not succeed, like I mentioned, it is going to be difficult. We're having such various, which was touched upon yesterday, very, very, very different tribes attempting to come together and coalesce.
That's all of Africa is like that.
Yeah, but it's very unique and special when it comes to the sovereign nation of Nigeria, because of who is sovereign.
Okay, let me say this. I think you're asking for the benefit, right? And this is new, but it's going to be a tremendous benefit to the entire continent, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. The oil refinery that was built by Dangote is going to help, it's going to supply oil to the entire West African, region and potentially down to Central and Eastern Africa. So that's a huge deal where we don't have to buy oil from outside of the continent.
True.
Nigeria is a large oil producing nation, and that's going to have oil circulating in our region.
And
so that's a big plus
as well. Nigeria has the cleanest, yellow, blonde colored oil. The Arabs, they have that sticky, tacky, tar looking stuff. I'll yield. Sorry, just sharing.
So I just want to give you one advantage that could change the continent, and I think it's coming. It's down the road.
Of the future or right now? Because the title says if Nigeria dies.
Well, just looking at the human resource of the country. I mean, they have over 200 million people. They have a lot of great minds. They have technology hubs in Nigeria. They have a economic state like Lagos. They have a lot of great things on the continent that is a microcosm of how great Africa could be.
So we're talking about potentials right now.
I mean, who's better than Nigeria? Are you going to bring up South Africa? Are you trying to juxtapose it?
I would say right now and the future, yes.
So right now, let's God forbid, okay, Nigeria goes to war with itself over some foolishness that should never happen. You're trying to say West Africa.
I would say it would destabilize not only West Africa but the entire continent.
Expand on that for me.
Nigeria is not going to war. We've already been.
No, it will never go to war. I'm just trying to get us to see something. Dinas, can you expand on that for me, please? How would that destabilize?
So the number one, if Nigeria was to go to war within itself, number one, you'll have a refugee crisis out of this world.
Biafra Part 2, the Biafran War Part 2.
Yeah, it would. You have no idea how it would affect the continent.
But Biafra didn't change Africa.
That was back in the 60s, bro.
Yeah,
Where are you
but
from? I mean, I want to get your point of view. Are you Ghanaian? Are you South African? Tell us where you're from. Maybe you think your country is better than Nigeria. Let us
let's
know.
listen. I'm Ghanaian, but don't make
Oh,
it
see, there we
seem like
go.
Ah,
There we
there we
go.
go.
There we
see.
There
go.
we
Here's
go.
the
There we go.
foolishness
There we
again.
go.
Here's the foolishness. We're here to discuss. It doesn't matter where I'm from or where you're from. We're talking about Nigeria. Just because I'm not from there doesn't mean I can't contribute to the conversation.
The jollof
Okay,
rice is
so man, forget that foolish conversation.
I'm sorry.
Dumbass conversation.
True.
If Nigeria dies, I'm just trying to find out if you guys can enlighten me. How is it going to destroy the entire continent? That's what I want to know.
The goods and services that Nigeria provides to Africa is immense. You may not see it, you may not know about
So
it, but it's
I don't know.
immense.
So expand. Give me some.
ECOWAS, for
Teach me.
example, hold on now. ECOWAS, for example, the regional branch of
It's
of the
headquartered in Nigeria.
yeah, it's in Nigeria,
Tinubu was just reelected as the ECOWAS president. I think this
right?
week,
So that
yeah.
the stabilization of just that region alone depends
ECOWAS is
heavily on
not doing
Nigeria.
nothing.
Nigeria funds ECOWAS. They fund a lot of these projects that the West African states undertake. Nigeria is like the America of West Africa, specifically. So if you try to dismiss it, if they collapse, that entire region will be in chaos. I think you can admit to that.
I understand you guys are Nigerian and you guys want
No,
Nigeria
we're
to
not.
win. I
I'm
want
not
Nigeria.
Nigeria. I'm just saying, don't try to
But
undermine the
you are
importance of
on the
Nigeria.
Nigerian team. I watch you. I listen to you all the time.
People would tell you
Let's be-
otherwise. I appreciate Nigeria, but I also equally criticize them. So don't say that. I like Ghana, but Ghana is not ready to step in the
I'm
shoes of
not here to
Nigeria.
promote Ghana. See, you guys are the one.
So what is
Let's
your
not do that.
alternative? Are you saying Nigeria is not great and they can't be greater?
Again,
What is your
I
point of
never
view?
said that.
Ghana
You guys
is, of
let your
course,
emotions
the
get involved.
sovereign nation of Ghana is a very, very important partner, strategic in West Africa.
I never brought Ghana in. Let's not bring Ghana.
So,
We're not here to discuss Ghana.
Nobody's against Ghana, of course.
I never said anybody was.
Okay, all right. I'll step back, but of course,
You guys take your emotions out.
You're being so defensive, bro. State your point of view. What is your point of view about Nigeria? Let's hear it.
Ghana.
You guys are too much emotion. Okay. It says
Okay, let me pass it to John. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I just want to say Nigeria is a very lovely country, and it has an extreme amount of potential. But Nigeria's only influence, as terms of power, is in West Africa. It has nothing to do with South Africa, Southern African countries, East African countries.
I disagree.
In fact, when Donna, she's been to a lot of different countries in Africa.
I disagree because even when you go to South Africa or even East Africa, Nigerian banks are there. Nigerians are there. Nigerians are everywhere. So
Nigerians are everywhere.
And again, Nigerian bank. In fact, in Kenya, indigenous Nigerians acquired like 2 or 3 banks in Kenya this last year. UBA is in Kenya, so it's just you can't say that. You can't say that about Ghana. You can't. The only other country that has a presence, I would say, throughout sub-Saharan Africa is maybe South Africa. And when it comes to institutions, but when it comes to institutions, Nigeria is everywhere.
Also, Dynas, I'm not sure if you know, but Nigerians in South Africa, they pressed some people. Nigerians being Nigerians, they made some commentary, and I know they upset some people. Nothing big, but but just going through what you said, the presence, the reputation,
and somebody just brought Nigeria supplies electricity to Benin Republic. I know that for a fact. I'm trying to figure out what other countries.
Nigeria supplies electricity to a lot of countries. That's
that's my point.
But the irony is Nigeria itself does not have stable electricity.
But again, they supply it to other countries. That's the irony.
Business.
They supply it.
That's just business. That's not even an intelligent decision to have your population without electricity. And when you don't have electricity, you don't have water. That's not intelligent.
They're only doing business. They're not trying.
Now, in terms of Nigeria's power in ECOWAS, certainly no one thinks ECOWAS is better than the East African Community Organization that they got going over there. ECOWAS says that if you're a resident of any of these countries, you can go to any of these countries without problems. That's not true, Danish. You went to other ECOWAS countries on your Nigerian passport, and you have problems. In your videos, you have problems.
Well, I just so
but
at the Gambia Senegal border, the Senegal made me pay like an entry fee, which is BS. But
most certainly. Now, You need a passport to go to these places. But in the East African community, you can move with an ID. You don't need a
Hey,
passport to go to none of these
Jonathan,
countries.
you're misinformed. You can move with ID within ECOWAS as well by road.
By road.
Correct.
Just road.
By road, but you cannot move around in the East African community with just by air with just a ID card. You have to have a passport.
Might have to look that up again.
But like I said, by road you can move. But by road you can move around with just an ID.
And then in terms of development, are we saying that the Nigeria or ECOWAS is more developed than Nairobi? Is Lagos more developed than Nairobi? When you leave the Lagos airport, you know the hell you go through. When you leave,
I was just there in May.
I
What
mean,
what hell?
We got to be realistic.
What hell?
You as you say, what hell? But in terms of Nigerian stars and other people who are actors or people who are musicians, that ain't moving around without bribing people or paying a numerous amount of money to the immigration people. It's already been documented how people are treated at that Lagos airport. They're not treated that way.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there are definitely cases of, bribes being paid, but I mean, it's not. I would say this: it's definitely not the norm. Hell, I got hit up at the airport in Casablanca. I get hit up at all these airports.
Were you ever hit up in Kenya or Rwanda?
I was hit up in Zanzibar.
Kenya or Rwanda?
Well, Tanzania is East Africa. I've never been to Rwanda.
Okay, now
in fact, you know what? I'm gonna tell you. In fact,
terms of development, is your ride a lot more smooth?
But Jonathan, you live in Nigeria. Why don't you go to Kenya or Rwanda? There's so much better.
It's just weird, man. Jonathan, you can't.
I can go wherever the hell I want to go.
Well, I was gonna say this, but in fact, I take that back. I was hit up in Nairobi back in 2016. They were doing this. In fact, they stopped it. They were doing this hotel scam.
A hotel scam.
Yeah. So what they will do, they'll have when you leave the air, like right in the airport lobby, they will have these booking agents for hotels. And what they would do, they would I forgot. They put it was considered a scam, and they stopped it.
Nigeria is the epic center for Black people, bro.
Worldwide. Yeah, it's just what it is. We could argue, we could debate and fight about it, and infrastructure and Nairobi.
The idea is this:
you guys are just
we can say that
population.
Nigeria
It's
has
just population.
it's the most popular. Well, I won't say the most popular, but socially the most popular in Africa. They have the best.
It's the largest population in Africa.
That don't mean a damn thing.
It's the largest.
It don't mean nothing.
It's
the
largest
population don't mean shit.
It's the largest population in Africa, and
Nigeria has a large population, the majority countries in the world.
African diaspora in the Americas,
and that don't mean a damn thing, man.
It's all people from Nigerian tribes. All of these Black Africans in the Americas are majority Yoruba Igbo. That's it.
Ma'am.
Can I ask Jonathan a question?
Listen, we give Nigeria a lot of credit, okay? But a lot of things that y'all state as a flex is not a flex. Like when people be like, you can't go anywhere in the world without seeing the Igbo. I mean, there were Igbos in Ukraine.
Jonathan,
why the hell did you go into Ukraine? Because you want a better life. But you went to the poorest country, you want for a better life. That's a bad sign.
People travel to go to schools and education. That's what Igbo people do. It is not better life. It's you travel.
So you couldn't get that education in Nigeria. You had to travel out.
Why would you
Jonathan, who gets their education in Africa?
Because it's not good over there.
No, but when that the matter changed, should Nigeria be leading the way?
So Nigeria asked the best, right? The most educated people, right? In Africa, right?
Correct.
You're trying to tell me that they can't produce the best education?
We actually
the best educational systems?
We do have quite a few.
Education is perfectly fine. I don't see how
it's not.
Not if you're traveling out, baby.
All these doctors,
So are you stating that when American goes studies in another country, you have Americans who study in Europe, Asia?
Are they studying in Nigeria?
You have Americans.
And the number of people leaving America to go study.
Look, Jonathan, Nigeria could be better.
There are a lot of professionals.
College in another country means that you don't want to be educated in your country.
And that's a problem. So why?
Your
Why don't you want
entire
to be
argument, the
educated in
premise of the
Nigeria?
conclusion makes no sense.
No, but
there are
it's
lots
not.
It
of
makes a lot of
professionals
sense.
out of
If
there are
you
lots of
don't
Jonathan, we
Saying
professionals
that
understand what you're
trained in
saying,
Hey,
Nigeria.
but at the
guys, let me
same
pass the
time,
mic. Let me pass the mic. Go,
yeah,
Jay,
go
unmute
ahead.
yourself. Go ahead, Jay.
I had a question for the panel, but I might be changing the conversation. Is that cool? Just for a little bit, a little interjection.
What's your question?
Well, so basically, I'm East African, y'all. Peace and love, y'all. So basically, like in Kenya, right? There's a sentiment that those at the very top in politics are basically like puppets of the West. In fact,
Well, how does this tie into the?
I'm getting to Nigeria side. I'm getting to Nigeria position. So basically, in fact, I think like Russia held like a symposium last year of African countries, and I think Nigeria and Kenya might have been the few countries that didn't attend. Nigeria's position on the upheaval of the coups that happened in that region. I think Nigeria, obviously, remember ECOWAS, and they were kind of opposing and kind of giving Burkina Faso, Mali, and all those other countries a hard time. I was curious how you guys felt about that, and if you guys also have the growing sentiment that's happening on the east side with all these protests that happen in Kenya. Obviously, you guys know what happened recently with all the protests and the finance bill that we had over there. I see also protests planned in Nigeria as well.
Protests. They stormed the Capitol. They stormed the legislature.
Yep.
Yep.
Protests. Yep. So I've seen some
January 6th, African style.
So I've seen some posts on Twitter of other protests organized in several other countries, including Nigeria. I was curious because you guys were talking about like the divide between the North and the South earlier. So I was just curious if you guys were kind of had any opinion on that in terms of in any political change that might come about. Are the youth do you feel that they could organize kind of like how the Kenyans organized recently to kind of shake the political establishment in Nigeria? And if that's like a whole other conversation y'all don't want to get into, that's fine. But I just kind of wanted to throw that out there.
On the issue of Nigeria kind of being against the coup, I think it's logical because those of us who are from West Africa, especially those of us who've been in countries that that have had coups, we know what that can degrade into. It goes into war, starvation, all kinds of bad things can happen from a coup. And Nigeria being the head of ECOWAS, they wanted to make sure that these West African states don't tend to indulge or themselves in the ideas of coup, because you would think you're liberating your people, but there's sometimes unforeseen consequences, and it can drive your nation into total chaos. So Nigeria being against coup, it's not something that is illogical. So I agree with them being against those coups, and I think some of these countries are not being ostracized because democracy in West Africa needs to thrive, because we've seen the history of coups, especially in Liberia and other countries in West Africa, that led to almost the complete destruction of those countries, and it takes many, many years to rebuild them. So I agree with Nigeria, point of view on that regard. So I'll pass the mic. Maybe other people can answer the second part of his question.
Let me pass it to Jagun. Go ahead, Jagun.
Thank you, guys. Good day to you all. My salutations. Based on the last question from our brother from East Africa, many things. Where ECOWAS is concerned and where Tinubu is concerned in being the leader of ECOWAS and Nigeria, I don't believe he made a decision that was Afrocentric in any way in putting pressure on the governments of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. These are our direct brothers. They have a lot of Hausas in both Niger and Burkina Faso. So to go to war with them would really, would really not be a war that benefits any African. And this was basically the myopic pursuit of an individual who had stolen an election. and wanted to make sure that he himself cannot be usurped from his position that was stolen, as the gentleman in Niger was positioned to captain Niger. The military said no at a certain point. For me, there are many things that go on in Africa that doesn't always perform the catalysts that it possibly should in order to mark change for the whole continent. I never speak from a point of view of the government, especially where Nigeria is concerned. Nigeria doesn't have a government. Nigeria doesn't have a functioning country. It's not a functioning country. It's not a country that anyone who calls himself Nigeria and understands what Nigeria's problems have been from the 1960s. Anyone who has that frame of conjecture on that country knows that Nigeria is not functioning. Many of our diaspora are. I can tell you in the 19th.
I disagree, Nigeria.
Yeah, I know you disagree. I know your point of view. Wait, just let me land, please. Please, goodness gracious. I know your points of view. You newcomers, you have a foggy sense of view where Nigeria is concerned. And I know why you have that foggy sense of view. Now, but it is foggy. Don't get me wrong. You that champion Nigeria and think Nigeria is the bee's knees. Wait, let me land. Please.
What about the Nigerians who were there? This is the Nigerians who were there. That
you should try and understand where I'm coming from.
Nigeria means Nigeria is different for different people.
No, I understand that, but all I'm wanting to do is make my point without interruption. I interrupted nobody.
Right, but you seem to have.
Please, my brother. Please let me land.
Let him finish.
Right, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Jago.
Now, all I'm saying is that this is my point of view and how I see Nigeria. Nigeria's had the potential to be far greater than it is. It has wonderful people who are very diverse and very energetic and can lift themselves out of the mire that they presently find themselves in. However, the elite in Nigeria have the lock on the country, and I believe it's the diaspora and the grassroots that need the communication and awareness to lift Nigeria away from where it is. So what has taken place in those three West African countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, was actually an opportunity for West Africa to renew itself and empower itself. But what happened is that the French and the Americans, who were oppressing that part of the world very particularly, were not seen as that and were still backed by these ECOWAS dumbwits who couldn't see the wood for the trees and didn't, apart from their own selfish reasoning and their positioning by the hegemony of the West. I'm afraid this happened in West Africa.
What would you have had
in East Africa
do? What would you have had ECOWAS do? Say, yeah, we really feel like your coup is commendable.
It's not about ECOWAS. For me, yeah. For me, because I operate in a paradigm that is Afrocentric. And what I mean by that is it's coming from the Pan-African point of view, that we as a people need to be making communication between ourselves that give us an operation that is forward thinking and not the beckoning of the West.
But diplomacy is nuanced. So
I'm not saying it's not, but let me put this to you, my brother. Let me just put this to you.
Right.
In what happened with those three African countries that have now seceded from the ECOWAS itself, they saw ECOWAS slap them in their face. They didn't see ECOWAS backing them in any way. In
how
fact,
could ECOWAS back them when they
this is how
government?
This is how, because you think things are impossible. I don't. You see, the regime.
You're not being realistic.
Let me land. You maybe in your mind, but this is my mind speaking. So in my mind, those three countries that took power away from the French and the Americans, threw them out particularly, this is a step forward for any African state. For an African country that believes it's operating in a democracy, not to see the significance of the military operation that were taking place in these areas is for them to be dunce, dumb and stupid, where they cannot see what is happening. Forget the politics and the jam and I'm ECOWAS. Forget all that, because these are
You
just
can't forget the politics.
what
of
I mean by this. What I mean by
political
them is that these are not institutions founded necessarily continually on African principles.
Listen,
Largely.
if
Why
I can
are you
respond to what
disturbing me?
you're saying.
Are you so afraid of what I'm saying?
No, if I can just respond, you've been speaking nonstop for the last 5
You
minutes.
know, you're very long-winded, Jagoon. You're very long-winded.
Maybe you don't like my speech pattern, but it's all I've got, bro. I haven't got somebody. There's not somebody else speaking for me. I'm speaking for myself.
Right.
If you find it long-winded, then you can't. You're not following.
Most people agree with you. Most people agree with you in principle. However, in action, there's nothing else ECOWAS could have done. There's no way ECOWAS would come out and back a coup.
Why
by
not?
any country in West Africa.
Why not?
It's just not done, because
coups are destructive. Coups are destructive, Jagon.
But Nigeria, I'll tell you this. Nigeria has had several coups. If you look and you track, wait there, bro. If you look,
country?
Wait.
Please, can you the rights of the people was trampled when you had dictators in power in Nigeria.
Wait, let me say this. Let me just say this. I'm going to come out soon. If you look at what's happened since Nigeria got its independence and what the civilian governments have done in Nigeria and what the military governments have done in Nigeria and compare them, you will see that the military governments fare better.
I knew you was going there. You're an authoritarian.
It's not about authoritarian. It's about the facts on the ground. Who wants to be oppressed? Do you think I want to be oppressed? Do you think I want my people oppressed? Don't just take what I'm saying for what it is.
You want them to be oppressed by their own people rather than be oppressed by the West. That's what you want, right?
Oh no, it's not what I want. But because you jump to your conclusion, you can suffer that by yourself.
Abacha killed Abiola and they deprived Nigeria of their first democratically elected.
I'm going to deny that. Why are you saying that? Am I going to deny it?
So why are you saying it's good? Why are you saying the country fared better?
Good.
You saw the killings and the oppression that happened on Abacha. You saw
my friend. If you can get off your emotional destabilization.
You said you agree with them.
You listen to what I said. And I did not say that I prefer military rule for a second. I was just making an underlinement that military rule has done a lot, whether you like it or not. You can make the comparison. It's not I'm asking you to make the comparison, not me. You people are so emotional.
Military rule led to the Biafra War. Gowon was in there when the war started. That was destructive.
You can say I won't argue with you about that.
You're right, and that's a fact.
But I will still make the statement that the military governments in Nigeria there are more things that you can see that they have done on the ground today than you can see for any. All right,
I'm not sure if you lived in Nigeria.
Democracy is harder. It takes longer for things to get done.
Instead
of having a dictator just dictate what happens, so things happen faster on a dictator than Democrats.
All right.
There's never been this much free. Nigerians aren't happy. I get it. Nigerians are not doing too well, but there has never been this much freedom in Nigeria. Never. At no point.
Freedom to what? Freedom to starve. Freedom to die.
Freedom to live without the fear of death.
Freedom to express yourself.
Freedom. Oh my goodness.
Dinah, if I may add.
Freedom for you to express yourself. Freedom for you to criticize.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead, Biafra. I got to pass to Philip.
I think, Dinah, and to the panel, let us not forget democracy. To have democracy, what democracy is, if you look in history, and namely the past, 250 years, it is very, very bloody. Democracy is fickle because democracy is the mob. If we're going to embrace democracy, we have to also keep in mind the heavy, heavy Muslim population in Africa. Is there really a Muslim majority country in the world that has fully embraced democracy? The only country in the Middle East that is a liberal democracy is Israel. Everywhere else around them is Islamic government. And with that being said, Dinas, let us also remember that Islam, like the Islamism or these Islamic governments, it has failed, Dynast. And we know that from history with the Ottoman Empire. It does not work. Christendom has worked, embraced liberal democracy, but it doesn't work very well with Islam. And we already know that because northern Nigeria, the Fulani, the Hausa, they are anti-West. And to embrace democracy, you have to embrace Western liberalism. Not to change the subject, but we don't necessarily need liberalism with capitalism. The Chinese have proven that. But if we're going to have democracy, we do need to embrace Western liberalism.
I don't know that we have to embrace
We
Western
need to
values.
modify democracy. Democracy needs to be modified for Africans. That's
let me pass it to Philip. Go ahead, Philip. Unmute yourself, Philip.
Philippe.
Hello.
Philippe.
Thanks, Dennis. Another good show today. Hello to the panel. I think where I wanted to start with this is there's a general frustration because the quote unquote wealth and resources of Nigeria are not realized in the scale that it should be for the actual Nigerians, all of the groups. And one of the things that has to be addressed is, why does corruption exist? What in the African context, when we talk about these various governments, what is actually the goal of corruption? And I can tell you.
Hey, can somebody stop typing? Like, if you're typing, just mute yourself. Well, if you're typing, just mute yourself. All right, go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, I'm bringing this up because I did, just a brief kind of cursory look over the Nigerian GDP, how much of its GDP is contributed to by oil and its other resources, and just generally why a petrostate like Nigeria does not see the kind of wealth and economic growth that some of the Arab states do that are also petrostates. And a big part of it is because we don't seem to understand why corruption in itself exists. And the answer to that is because the institutional entities that are wealth makers around the world, whether that be corporations or countries, they don't want to deal with a bunch of people, meaning democracy, to ensure their investments go where they want them to go. They want to deal with a small group of people, and then to have that small group of people implement their goals. And so when you have that kind of push and pull, then each nation state has to come up with a system to benefit their people, hopefully. The problem in Nigeria is, from the jump, they never really got their own full system. What the British essentially did was to keep the British charter, the Commonwealth, that created Nigeria as a financial entity, not as a country. And so when we start talking about these things like democracy, then you got to start talking about the border draw, the borderline drawing, and who benefits from those borders and why it works or it doesn't work. And what the first thing that has to be addressed is, if you're going to see Nigeria thrive, then there has to be a consensus among all Nigerians that they have a system that adjudicates justice in a way that everyone understands it, everyone has access to it, and that businesses can thrive through it. That is not the system that they presently have, and it's by design. And so what winds up happening is we talk all around it, but The reality of it is, as oil rich as Nigeria is, the day-to-day people don't receive the benefits of that in the way that they should. One of the few things that they were getting was cheap gas through a subsidy. And now that's being taken away. And in part, it's because we have to look at ownership of the resources. And in Nigeria's case, that what they've elected to do is to have a hybrid system of privatization that foreign powers own most of their stuff. And they keep mortgaging it out every group that comes in there. Tinubu's the most recent, but they basically they're leasing their own country to themselves. They're taking their resources and selling them to someone else or a group of people, and then buying back the finished goods from their own resources. It's insane. And so you have to adjust the legal system that it exists within. But nobody is talking about that. Nobody is saying.
Phil, I want to get to this video too. Like 30 more seconds, and I want to get to this video.
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt the video.
I have to ask you at this point, Dennis, for what Philip is saying, does what he's saying, whether you're understanding it, does it emerge? Wait, does it emerge as a society and a country that is functioning?
Let me play this video, because I mean, this is an indigenous Nigerian in Nigeria, and people need to hear this. Give me 1 second. Let me play this.
Significant, and they start thinking impact, they will not be there for too long.
Or do you think the country has made it become that way that people think of survival these days? Now look at the current state we're in: recession, back and forth, hardship, left, right, and center.
Look,
so if someone is thinking of the next daily bread, your mindset will not be going towards thinking of what you're going to do rather than what you're going to have that daily bread.
Now you see, there's what we call the Maslow's hierarchy of need, and many people don't understand why that came up. You see, Maslow in his days, the UK is not different from this one, because many of you don't study history, and because we don't study history, we think that there's one special thing about Nigeria. For instance, let me just digress. I'll come back. We had a very sad episode of one of our major icons that died in a helicopter crash in America. And when they announced, okay, the investigation is going on, it will take 1 to 2 years to complete the investigation to know the full report. If it is Nigeria that thing happened, and they say they will take 1 to 2 years, the whole social media and all of them go down, they talk rubbish. Hey, how can they take 2 years? Hey, maybe they kill up. They talk rubbish, but because it's America now, nobody's talking. We are just a bunch of unserious people. We don't love our country. We are not patriotic. That's why you are thinking that one country is better than your own. Nigeria is one of the best countries in the world. It's because many people have not gone around. Nigeria is one of the best countries in the world. Yes, we have bad leaders, we have bad environment, but that doesn't mean that all of us will be cursing the country. So let me go back to Maslow. When England was like this, when human being, America was like this, they were worse than us. Go and do your research. It took years for them to come out. Yes, it's taking us long. We are not having the right kind of leader, but all of us must play our part. So back to Maslow. So Maslow was trying to find out, why do human beings behave like this?
Let me
if you're a parent of an athlete trying to get
okay. All right, I just thought.
Can I land? I thought that was important, but I wanted to get to the core of this, which is people talk about. I hear Nigerians talk about the corruption. I would posit to them that Nigeria today is no more corrupt than the United States was at the beginning of the 20th century. You go.
That is cold hard facts. Correct. Yes. Thank you for saying
and that I would argue that Nigeria today is no more corrupt than Singapore was midway through the 20th century. And that what happened was, in both cases, in the case of the United States, the reforms happened through the New Deal. And in the case of Singapore, they happened through the leadership of basically a dictator that set up a justice system that cleared out the corruption. And actually, Singapore is closer to Nigeria than the United States is in this regard. In that that Singapore was a vassal state of the UK that was essentially run by a couple of families. It was a pirate state that was a hang-off of Malaysia. And what they did was they came up with a set of laws and facilitated business and the contribution to social growth of its country to be able to benefit from the businesses that they had there. Nigeria, for some reason, and its people seem to feel that they can't live amongst each other in the various factions that were drawn up by the British lines. And I don't believe that's true. I believe that if they took a hybrid model of, say, Switzerland or South Korea and combined them, that gave a certain amount of authority to the regional areas, but had a strong federal arm that streamlined the justice system there and that controlled certain areas of the economy that they're trying to grow, that it could 5x, 10x the economy. But the problem is that people have grown accustomed to the corruption and siphoning that exists now, and they're afraid that if they reform, then these inside hustle deals will disappear. And so therefore, the people who benefit from the present system fight the reforms, you see? And so that's what I wanted to get at is I agree with Dinus's premise that if Nigeria dies, the continent will suffer tremendously because it is an anchor to Black Africa. But I also think, but I also think that the Nigerians themselves have to be serious about making the real reforms, and that means the elites and the cronies as well. That say in 20 years they can be a Singapore-like country, but they don't want to do it, and that's really the truth. Now maybe that's a result of education, maybe that's a result of fear mongering, but I just looked at it. If Nigeria nationalized its resources right now, they would be embargoed. They would be put on the non-cooperation list. And what would they do? And what would they do? Their primary buyers of their things like oil are India, the Netherlands, basically Western powers, French. So how do you benefit your people from the resources that you have? You have to have inter-African trade and to develop that. But for some reason, and I'll leave it to the panel at that plan and that structure is never discussed. It's never really front and center to fix.
What you have said?
Well, guys, let me pass it to Dark Moon because I want to get other people engaged. Go ahead, Dark Moon.
May I go after Dark Moon, Dinus, please?
Let me bring Justin on, and then go ahead, Dark Moon.
Thank you, Dinus.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. There's something I would like to say, Dinus, about this is that the mistake of, I wouldn't like to say the mistake of Nigeria, right? But in lack of better terms, the mistake of Nigeria happened when the North and South joined together.
Listen,
Very correct.
But let me
Dark Moon. There's gonna be no Biafra, nobody separating.
No, I'm not talking about
Biafra.
I'm not talking about Biafra or anybody separating. I'm just trying to be on a historic term. I'm just trying to bring a little context to the thing, to what's going on mostly in Nigeria, right? So in the North, you technically, historically, you have the Sokoto Caliphate. This was about 1912, where the Sokoto Caliphate was invading Nigeria at that point in 1912 when the British the British came in to Nigeria.
There was no Nigeria in 1912.
There was the northern and southern Nigeria. That's what I'm saying. The Sokoto
it was not called Nigeria.
Kenan Bono.
I know that's what that's basically the term I'm trying to get on, right? Then the southern Nigeria, as far as I'm concerned, Igbos, Yorubas, Ijaws, they can get along fine.
Very
But
true, actually. Yeah.
that northern side where you have the conservative Islamic groups there, the north is the reason why Nigeria and Afghanistan are the only countries in the world where polio is still a thing there. Why? Because it's against them. It's against their religion. It's haram. The north, a lot of Western things that we accept in the south part of Nigeria, if you take it to the north and you speak out loud on it, you will die. You get killed for it. Nigeria to me is one of Britain's accomplishments in terms of colonialism. Nigeria is like a World Cup for Britain.
All of Africa.
For what they've done. So right now, Daniels, you have Igbos here, you have Yorubas. I don't know if there are any Hausas in the panel, but I'm not even part of a major tribe. I'm an Ishekiri boy. You don't know. We don't have a
You are
voice.
part of the Yoruba nation.
We don't have a voice in Nigeria. Even Benin, the great Benin Empire, they don't even have a voice in Nigeria. It's all Hausa.
No, stop saying Hausa. Differentiate between Hausa and the Fulanis. The people disrupting Nigeria are the Fulanis. They are not the Hausas.
Yeah, the Fulanese control the Hausa and they
tend to
follow
be
the
more
Fulanese.
literate than the Fulanese. The Hausas tend to be more literate than the Fulanese. The Fulanese are basically like rogue
I'm
people.
sorry, my bad. The Fulanese.
You guys see
Right.
his religion playing part right now? It's Christians and Muslims going at it right now. I hope you guys understand that.
That's exactly what the problem is. That is exactly what the problem is. You cannot, Igbo people
It's
are
not.
not going to
It's
tolerate.
not Christians and Muslims going at each other. That's not the case in this case. How can you tell us through the camera that we are Christians and Muslims?
One mic. Let me pass it to Justin and then Jagoon. If you want to respond, you can. Go ahead, Justin.
Okay, so I've got like 5 things to say. First of all, the guy before Dark Room said something. He said one good thing and he said something that didn't make sense. And he said something that I keep hearing so many African people say is just so annoying. First of all, he said Nigeria needs to find a way to share the power amongst like the individual regions while still having this sense of statefulness, right? And that's true. We should be more like Spain. We need to have like actual autonomous regions and nationalities. I mean, even in the United States, they have these places where this state that is known to have mostly Native Americans. It's like a conservative state for Native Americans, but there are still white people there, right? We need things like that in Nigeria. We really, really do. We need to preserve a lot of the past cultures. Like the problem with African people is we're just so bad at preserving culture. I come from
Nigeria.
what we would formerly call Great Benin, and the walls are they're fairly non-existent now. Only some places near like maybe the Obas Palace, you still see the walls existing. You could blame it on British people, but technically it's not part of our fault for not even preserving it in the first place. You could say British people destroyed it, but still we should have preserved it in one way or the other. But back to my original point, he also said something about oil. I barely even consider, like literally in my head, I barely even consider oil as something that would grow Nigeria. I barely even consider it in my head. Like people don't understand. We're not looking at growing a wealthy Nigeria. We can't copy the American model of being a wealthy nation. America is the worst role model of any country. Don't try to be like America. Trying to be like America is like trying to be like a big bad bully in the room. That's why countries are trying to model Singapore, not America. America is looking for wealth. Other countries are trying to grow their
That's
HDA.
because America is run by Europeans.
That's okay. You could say that, fine. That's not the point. The point is, countries are trying to be like Singapore. That's a good role model. Countries are trying to be like Australia. That's a fairly decent role model. Countries that have high HDI, good standard of living. America is basically like the most messed up, successful country.
Well,
you all can agree with me.
Okay,
So like,
but we do find here, we're going to speak about the United States. We do find here, we make money. We love capitalism. We generate money. That's the United States.
Yeah.
Does he live in the United States or does he live in the UK?
I live in the UK.
Okay, thank
There
you.
you go.
I live in the UK, and I see, like, did you know that just last week I met like another African person protesting like this Israel-Palestine shit, and she barely even knows where Palestine is on the map.
Yeah.
And then I then asked her, like, why do you talk so much on Middle Eastern issues? Is it because you're a Muslim? Because basically she's a Somali, and she's like, yeah, but Palestine is in Africa. And then I knew I was talking to an idiot, so I just walked away.
Justin,
That's like the level of Afrocentralism, even amongst the diaspora, is crazy, stupid. It's as if we don't care.
Well,
But
anyway,
anyways,
we have so many different problems. We have to pick our battles. Back to
exactly.
Back to Nigeria and its petroleum issue. What people are neglecting to understand is the Western powers are not going to sit back and watch you industrialize, and they're doing just that right now to Dangote. They're trying to prevent his refinery from actually producing petroleum.
Yeah, but the reason why I was pointing out what I was pointing out is, at the end of the day, oil doesn't make access to water easy for the average Nigerian. Oil doesn't make access to food easy for the average Nigerian. It doesn't do the actual things that increases your.
Let's pass the mic. Look, Jagoon, you got 30 seconds. I'm gonna pass it the Pan-Africanist Junction 28.
This is Cosmic Chaos, by the way.
Okay, Jagoon. Okay, all right, Cosmic Chaos. Go ahead.
Hello? No, I'm here. I didn't know my mic was off.
Go ahead.
A lot of
seconds. Go ahead.
That's a lot of. All right, a lot of things have been said, and they're all very interesting. I'm hoping that I'm allowed to speak without interruption. I feel that we don't necessarily follow from what people have said that is real and reality, and it's very difficult to continue a conversation where there is so much disagreement on certain points. Now,
by unqualified
Philip, fair enough. Philip gave a long iteration of how he sees Nigeria, and in listening to him, I feel he's somebody who understands Nigeria very well. He says things differently from I do, but he reaches a similar point. But fundamentally, for me, Nigeria systematically isn't working. It's not about Tinubu or the next person or the next person. Whoever you bring into this present polity is not going to achieve much for Nigeria, given the level of corruption in the system and the system that we currently propagate. It doesn't deliver what we want. Realistically, if Nigeria and Nigerians don't come together and take this present administration and the system down, there's no hope for Nigeria. If Nigeria goes to vote in 2027 and they vote in whoever they vote in under this present system, it's over. That's me.
And
All right, go Pan-Africans. Go ahead.
So
go ahead.
Yes,
go ahead.
Next? Me?
Yes, go.
Okay, all right. So this is how I want to start. To all you Nigerians in here, you all need to understand, overstand, and understand the fact that Nigeria is a country of many nations.
True. We know.
Nigeria itself was not imposed on itself by the people of that country.
We know.
Nigeria is a trust company. The president of Nigeria is a trustee.
True.
That's not true. That's not true.
I know what I'm talking about. Who owns Nigeria? Who named Nigeria? British.
You said it's a trust
Let me finish. Yes, it's a company that has put in a trust. That's why you have a constitution. Let me finish. That's the way I'm saying.
British colonial Britain. Nigeria is the colony. I see he's speaking about.
Yeah, but Nigeria has gained independence now.
You ain't got independence. You are still being indirectly ruled.
Yes, we are.
So now,
yes, that's true.
You're being influenced. You're not being ruled.
No,
You're being
influenced. You are being indirectly ruled.
Why did the British refuse Biafra? Why
can I talk, please?
Let the man finish.
Let him finish. Go ahead.
The people who are ruling you in Nigeria today are the children, the grandchildren of the people who sold you to slavery.
That's facts, actually. Look at the son names, in fact.
Now, who is Nigeria supposed to fight? It's not this your elite. Who you are supposed to fight is England, Britain. But how do you fight Britain? Hold on. How do you fight Britain? Nigeria must fight Britain by number one, changing your appetite. Changing your appetite for Eurocentric education, changing your appetite for European materialism. You got to first change your mindset and everything first in order for us to win this. Number one. Number two, in order for Nigerians to be able to enjoy whatever we have in our country, we need to start with a regional government.
That's
Because
exactly what I was saying.
once we understand that we are a country of many nations, then we will understand that our needs and wants are different.
Yeah.
So now, the things we have alike, we bring it to the center. The things that is distinct to us, we keep it where it's at. So our fight in today's world is with England.
I don't know if it's just England, it's the West in general.
But who colonized us? Who named you Nigeria? Who colonized you? Who named you Nigeria?
It's not, I mean, sure, they did, but most of the economic interest currently isn't just England. It's the West, whether it's France, the United States,
but
and England.
That is why Jagun was telling you that.
Look, this whole idea is...
I'm going to leave you alone. But that is why Jagun is telling you guys, but you guys are not listening. The way forward is to be Afrocentric. If you look at Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, look at what they just did today. In less than 1 year, this confederation country has spent $1 billion within each other. Buying oil, buying things from each other. The only way for Africans...
Sorry, excuse me. I would actually like to disagree with that.
Stop interrupting him. Let him finish. Goodness me.
Stop shouting, bro. Come on, man.
Why don't you just let him finish, please? I don't want to shout, but I'm listening.
Okay, good. You don't have your children here. Just stop shouting at people.
Yeah, but don't interrupt him. Don't behave like a child. Don't behave like a child yourself.
Okay, calm it down. Let him finish.
Carry on, them.
So the only solution to African problem is to be Afrocentric. Once you are Afrocentric, everything else automatically change. You know who your enemy is, because one of our problems is that we don't know who our enemy is as Africans. If you ask 100 Africans who their enemy is, they will tell you 100 different people.
This is true.
So
okay, our enemy is ourselves, bro. The white man is not telling a Nigerian to be corrupt.
Anywhere this European go,
the white man is not telling Nigerians to steal billions and millions of dollars from their people.
Everywhere this man goes, the same behavior ensues from the people he goes to see. Everywhere he goes, it's the same character. See, black South Africans are not different from black Americans.
What are you talking about?
If you look at the way they behave,
may I respond after Pan-African?
Africans are inherently corrupt. We are corrupt. We destroy ourselves by corruption. That's not the white man's doing. They're not telling you to steal your own country's resources.
Go look at European history. European history is filled with them killing each other.
I agree with Elvis.
Go look at European history. It's filled with them killing each other.
We have our issues, but
everybody
we are
has
being
their
sabotaged.
issues. That's not what we are
Until we
talking about.
recognize that, that's the biggest threat we face currently, is being sabotaged.
That is a lazy man way of thinking.
Dangote Refinery is the perfect example. They don't care that we have oil. They just don't want us to refine our own oil, because that is true. That is true power. If we're taking markets from them and selling markets to their customers, they're fighting tooth and nail. And my fear is they are going to succeed in preventing the Dangote Refinery from producing crude. They're telling this guy he cannot buy Nigerian produced
are going to allow them to do it.
Bro, it happened with Saudi Aramco. They didn't want Saudi Arabia to refine their own oil. And for many years, the British and the Americans were running Saudi Aramco. So it's not just because you're black. It's about a power struggle. They're your competitors. They're not your friends. They're competing against you. They're competing against you. They don't want you to have the upper hand. So understand that.
Thank you. That's our biggest problem. It's not if
So
someone
if
from
say
the
our
east
biggest
or the
problem
west
is
or the north or the south. They want us to think that's our biggest problem. It's not. Our biggest problem is the people preventing us from refining our own product and adding to the value chain, because that's where the real money is.
They're competing against you. So you got to find a strategic way to overcome it. And let's see if Nigeria can do that.
But we can only do that by being Afrocentric. You will not be
We
able
are
to
Okay,
tell
African.
us
How can we be Afrocentric when most of what we said is
let me pass the
excuse
collar.
me, guys? How can we be Afrocentric
Let
and trade within
No,
each other?
You're not gonna talk over me. You're not gonna talk over
Dinah,
me.
can I please speak before
No, I'm
Kala
gonna pass the
speaks?
collar. Then
Please, for the love of
let
God,
me pass the
please.
collar first.
Africa has
Go ahead,
joined the
collar.
Oh,
fraternity of
Lord.
democracy.
Go ahead, collar.
Can you hear me?
We hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I was trying to switch to my laptop, but it's okay. I'll do it for my Obama phone. It's actually an iPhone, but I know you're gonna call it an Obama phone anyway. So but anyway, yeah, it's an interesting conversation. As you know, Dinah, I've been studying Nigeria for decades. You know, a lot of time I've been studying Nigeria more than a lot of these people on the panel have been alive. And I remember this one interview with Andrew Young was interviewing President Babangida back in the days. He was a former president, military president of Nigeria, and he just plain out asked him, "What's the reason? You got everything here." And he just said, "Look, I don't know what it is. We just, as a race," he just says slavery and everything. We're just corrupt. He just says we just can't get it together. And then a couple years later, I was hope because Abacha took over. You know, and this guy was no nonsense. Abacha was no nonsense. He got Nigeria's inflation down to 8%. He kicked out the IMF with a structural deficit, and because of him, you have Aliko Dangote, and he said, look, Nigeria is going to stop growing rice and stuff like that to export to the European market. We're going to basically focus on domestic markets and commodities. Just simple stuff about learning how to grow and do massive agriculture and distribution inside Nigeria was creating millionaires. They said, "Where do we need to go? What do we need to do this thing where we got to freaking go to the IMF and have our stuff shipped out and stuff like that?" Next stage was Nigeria could ship its own products thing. Right now, let me tell you something. Right now, there's no such thing as African export. There's no such thing. People are like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" Go ahead. No, European firms extract uh, crops, extract minerals, extract oil, and they pay the government. Africans, we have not even moved to the point where we're mining the stuff, we're drilling our own oil, and we're selling it. There's some other companies are doing all stuff like that. Just right there, that would add value right there because we're
But
selling.
that is why Jagun said, in order for us to do this, we must be Afrocentric. Because if you're not
Yeah,
Afrocentric, you
right.
won't
I
do
know
this.
that, but I'm
I would
saying
like to say something real quick
that should
after.
Dinah, may I
because
please?
that
I'm
right
going to
there.
drop.
Okay, Kala, you got 45 more. You got a minute, Kala. Then I got to pass the
Okay,
mic.
so
Go
what
ahead.
I'm saying is that right there should have been like back then it should have been like, wait a minute here. If we're gonna sell, the first thing you do is like, let me give you an example. Look at Japan, right? Mitsubishi, the big three automakers in Japan, right? They didn't start off selling Toyota, Honda, and Nissan to the American market. They built up the Japanese market and then the regional market first. You know, and then in the '60s, after 20 years, they start looking at the American market for cars. You know, the way Africa right now, Africa tried to industrialize based on the British, what they could sell to the British. They
But
sell
let
to
me ask you a
the
question, Kala. What do the
Hold on.
Japanese have that is very distinct? It's their culture.
It's a culture.
Yes.
You know what
I
I'm
would
saying?
like to say
But
something.
let me tell you
Well, hold on.
something.
Well, okay,
Hold on,
Kala, you got
heavy,
30
Dinah,
heavy,
can I
seconds.
heavy,
I'm gonna pass it
please?
to be Golly, y'all. Y'all chill out. Chill out.
And
Kala, you got
I'll drop. And
Kala,
you
you
can
got
leave it
30.
to your sausage.
Kala, you got 30 seconds. So I'm gonna pass it to be offered to the first.
Okay. Like I said, check us out. You know what it built the culture? An urban culture. Remember something. If you look at Japan, Japan had many different subcultures and everything like that. Industrialization, urbanization, and education, stuff like that, amalgamated a lot of these differences and everything. If people know they go into the same factory every day, going to the same school every day, that homogenizes people. And that's the problem we have in Africa. People are not. Where's the homogenization process? Like school. That's the first thing. School. You
Hey,
go
come
to
on.
school and you got Fulani, Igbo, everything going to the same school and everything, and then you teach them nationalism, nationalism and everything like that. They're gonna have that in them when they go into the workforce. They're gonna work together on the workforce. But basically, if people only know like their tribes to people, oh, your tribe comes before anything. That's backwards.
You're
You got
not
to
gonna
get
work.
rid of that.
Okay.
Can
All
I,
right, all right. So
can I
I'm saying,
explain? Let me
okay,
explain.
Kala,
30
let me
seconds.
pass it to be let me pass it to be offer. Go ahead,
I've
be
been
Thank
offer.
you so
quiet
much,
for a long.
Dinah. Okay, Kala, please just let me speak. Oh, Lord, just do not interrupt. what everyone has been mentioning, especially Ayo and Jagan, when we're discussing the UK and the United States, we always have to remember, first and foremost, we're speaking their language. We can make a lot of comments about, their powers and et cetera, but we do speak their language. And think of why is that? The British monarchy is the second oldest continuous institution in the world, second to only the Catholic Church.
That's
So
a lie. That's a fucking
you
lie.
have, so please, one moment. You have this group of rocks, an archipelago that has been able to consistently be consistent for now 1,000 years, and then replicated that to what would be the now United States. And what does the United States have? The United States has its constitution. My whole point is there is always that one source of truth. There is always that one end that the UK and that the United States has. The UK has its monarchy, which has been very, very successful. At the end of the day, they're never going to release their monarchy, because why else is there a reason to go to this pile of rock island archipelago called Great Britain? And then look at the success. Look at this monarchy.
I think you are romanticizing
Okay,
these people too
I would
much.
like
That's
to
not
say
the problem
something.
with you Nigerians. You romanticize these English people too much.
I would like.
Then go ahead. You're speaking their language. If you don't
Go
like
ahead.
it,
Force me
Go
to,
ahead,
and I also
Biafra.
speak
I
my
would
own
like to go
language
after.
fluently.
can I finish, please? Then all of you can go back to the sausage fest.
That is a lazy way of thinking.
Okay,
But go
I
ahead.
Let her
know.
No,
talk. Let her.
bros,
Let her
let her
talk.
finish now.
Let
It's her point of view. Let her finish. Why is it that interrupts everybody?
All right, let her go. Let her go.
Thank you, Jagan. Thank you. At the end of the day, what there would need to be, because in Africa, if you think about it, that consistent monitor is English. There are so many varied tribes, One area, you have tribes that are Muslim, that are Islam, namely, from what we know, the Fulani Hausa. And then also we have Igbo people who are Christian. And then at the end of the day, what is the major language? There's always a language of business in Africa. It is either English or French. There has to be, someone has mentioned nationalism. I don't know, maybe, I know it's silly, even a kingdom, but there has to be a constitution. There has to be one source of truth that we all go to from beginning to end. And I'll wrap up saying, when we look at democracy, look at France. France is on its 5th republic. And everyone knows what happened at 1789. You have the United States, the signing of the Constitution. In France, you have the beginning of the French Revolution. We all know what Edmund Burke said. He did not agree with the French Revolution. They go from monarchy, which was very successful for them, to this democracy, and it was so bloody. We all know French history here. I mean, these are African people on this panel. You all know history. It was a very bloody time, and France has always had issues coming out of it. Like I said, they're on their 5th republic. The United States, it's still on its 1st.
Okay.
Or back and forth. Everyone still goes to this Constitution of the United States. The Brits, they have.
You got 20 more seconds. So I got.
There's 20 more seconds. My question is the hypothesis: what will Africa do? Or namely West Africa, and then of course back to Nigeria.
Okay,
And
go ahead.
thank you so much.
Okay.
I'll drop in your panel now. Goodbye, everyone.
Okay.
Oh, don't run. Please stay and listen.
So I would like to say a few things. So human beings are tribalistic. Even the Europeans, for example, someone mentioned Spain. Spain had Portugal. They were basically tribes. Period. When people are groups, they're tribes. So you have Portugal, the Kingdom of Portugal, Castile, Leon, Navarre, Aragon, Catalonia. Same thing with.
We all know that.
Hold on.
Don't interrupt them. Don't interrupt them.
Same thing with what today is Great Britain. You had the Irish, the Saxons, the Scots, etc., etc. Same thing with the Germanic tribes that fought the Romans. All human beings are tribal, but eventually either these tribes fought each other and one became took over them all, or they either became one, or they fought a different kingdom and then they got together and established themselves. Just like the flag of Great Britain is the amalgamation of all those different tribes, even though some of them don't agree to this day, but either way, they became a nation. That's one. This is a world of nations. Pan-Africanism is a belief based on the product of slavery. There were slaves taken to the Americas. They were stripped of their African heritage. They see world as a color. So when they go back to Africa, they see we're all the same color. So we're all one. This was a world of nations. This is not a world of tribes. The tribes either get together and become a nation,
And you cannot put a whole group of people together just because they have a color. History, language, and everything that comes with that is what builds a society. You cannot relate to someone from the other side of Africa just because you have the same skin color. You don't have the same history, the same language, same culture, same customs. That's ridiculous. Even the weather, even the land, the economy from the other side of Africa is not going to be based on the same thing as the economy on the other side of Africa. There has to be a nation that you can reside to, that you can be based on. Even Europe, even though you have the European Union, Great Britain does not need the European Union because they are their own nation and they are able to do so. Someone mentioned Japan earlier. Japan was actually outcompeting the United States, and the G5 nations got together and they had to force or strong arm Japan to raise the value of its currency, just like China does. It devalues its currency, and that's what allows so many imports from China to be imported so cheaply. So what happened with the manufacturing of Japan, so many great products for so cheap price was coming into the United States, and it was outcompeting all the manufacturers, all the car manufacturers of the United States. They cannot produce so good vehicles of so good quality for so cheap as Japan. And Japan was becoming one of the richest nations, and it still is one of the richest economy on earth, in case y'all don't know that, after the United States and China. Is top 4 of the greatest economies, strongest economies in the world is Japan till this day, even though they had to raise the value of their currency, and therefore their imports had to decrease because they couldn't, the price literally increased. Once the yen increased, then it's their exports, the value of it increased. So
That was
therefore
around 1989, during the era of the DACA.
exactly, the G4, G5 nations, those Great Britain, US, they literally declared financial
They
war.
met in Manhattan.
They declared financial war on Japan. They was like, listen, we're gonna bully you. You need to raise the value of your yen. You're competing us. We can't come. I mean, a Toyota handle, those are great cars. They imported cheaply to the US. GM, what else? GM, Chrysler, all of them, they couldn't compete.
And
So,
another part you're forgetting is a second wave came with Japanese auto parts. Japan was competing in the auto parts industry that followed the Japanese automakers here. You know,
Exactly. So my point is, this is a world of nations. There's the United Nations. You simply cannot look at Asia. Asia is huge. You have Arabs are Asian. That's part of Asia. You have Indians. You have Chinese. You have Japanese. Ain't no way in the world the Chinese is going to consider himself a Japanese. An Indian is not even going to consider themselves a Paki. And their history, they literally and they
Hey, bro,
literally.
let me ask you this.
I'm
Right?
gonna finish. And even the history of India. You know how India became Pakistan and India became? They literally split based on religion. They were literally the same people, but even in that small of a distance, they don't even consider themselves the same. Japanese, Chinese, Saudi Arabia, Yemenis, etc. People don't come together. Oh, we're the same color. We're gonna ignore everything else and just be one. That's gonna be a disorganized mess. This is a world of nations. Go ahead.
Hey, well,
Can I just quickly, in backing what AA said? You see, I'm going to be very quick. I beg everybody's pardon. I just want to say that we all mentioned Singapore, but I wonder again if we understand the history of Singapore in terms of what Lee Kuan Yew said in the beginnings. He said there are 3 things that we are going to have to do. He said the first, where everybody in this country is going to speak English. They pushed back. They said, why? English are the people who just oppressed us. Why should we speak their language? He said, listen, he said, English is the business language of the world. And if we're not proficient, we are not going to be able to compete. 1. 2, in this land, there is no corruption. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make the wages of the politicians very high. But if one of you corruption, it's the death penalty. He made another prediction, which is gone from my mind. But this is a leader who sees further than his constituent parts as people. And they believed in him and they followed him. And hey presto, Singapore. We are still quibbling whether or not we should speak English. It's pathetic. Our
And
minds are like the
we
minds of
danced around the
children.
issue. Like I said, you're right. You're 100% right about that, brother. And also, Lee Kuan Yew said he calls himself. He took over the country at age 42, a young man and a lawyer. He said, "I was part of the first generation." You know what he said?
Allah, the man wasn't finished. He was making great points. Let him finish, bro.
I think he was.
Go ahead,
Anyway, let me say this. We could come back. I'm gonna be brief. Lee Kuan Yew also said that he said we did this thing called feedback after like 20 years. He said we went to the public, asked people what their opinion. First of all, we didn't care what they thought, right? So he said then we got feedback, right? And then we found out that people weren't agreeing with our policies. He said, you know what, they didn't change the policies. He said, fight harder to change the people's minds because we was right in the first place. And then the next time they did a feedback when people agreed with the original policy. That's strong leadership. I don't know if we could do that in Africa, black people, in general, because we riot and whatever like that. But it was just it was a very tenuous their hold on power. But the people were thing, and also when we talk about Japan. Japan was hated during World War II, right? But Japan and South Korea do $300 billion a year worth of business. Japan and China does $400 billion a year worth of business. They're all Asians and everything. The trade and business transactions between Singapore, Japan, South Korea, now Thailand, the Philippines, all that is in the tens of billions of dollars as the policies of the Bandung Conference of 1955 went online. We didn't have our version of the Bandung Conference, whereas policies, they had continuity. In other words, no matter who basically takes over office, there's certain policies in place to implement a Pan-African economic development like Asia did. We didn't do that. Instead, the Europeans bunkered down in Africa and all this division. That's why I said it's divisive when we start saying stuff like one country is more important than another country and whatnot. That's divisive talk, because somebody like Rwanda be like, well, I feel a certain way about that. Let's not do that.
The thing is, all these countries are all well and good, but we don't have the same obstacles. They only had to get one thing right. They only had to get their system of government right and stamp out corruption. No one is looking to Singapore or Japan for natural resources. So they didn't have that added obstacle where the rest of the world was incentivized to keep them in chaos so they can still keep on getting those resources for cheap.
But let
We
me ask you a
have that
question.
problem.
Remember, did you hear what I said earlier? That the natural resources in Africa are not mined by Africans; they're mined by foreign
Right.
companies.
So right. But exactly.
How come Africans did not mine and distribute these natural resources?
Well, I mean, I guess that we don't, and for numerous reasons. But the issue at hand is we don't either because we don't have the capacity or we're not
We had the
allowed.
capacity. Nigerians say they're the
we're
smartest people on the planet. Why
right.
can't?
We're not allowed. We're not allowed to, because we are trying to develop the capacity, and we are coming up against crazy obstacles. So it's not just a question of us getting our system of government right. We also have to figure out how to overcome these obstacles, which isn't just one country, by the way, because the rest of the world wants those resources. It's not even just Europe or the United States. The entire world wants Africa's resources for cheap. And they're going to try and keep Africa where it is because they are currently getting those resources for cheap and they don't want that to change. So we have really big problems. We have systematic problems, and then we have outsized influence that wants to keep us being the basket case that we are. And this is why, we can bicker and argue back and forth, but we're not even scratching the surface of the problems we have. Because if we even understand for a second that we can get a system that's 10 times better than Singapore, but we're still not going to be able to do very much to improve our way of life because outside forces won't let us, then it's going to be so easy for us to come together because we'll be fighting a common enemy. And this is why things are so chaotic whether it's Nigeria or just Africa in general. And I don't know if
Can
it's
I,
because
can I
But
just say, my brother,
first of
my
all,
brother, I don't want to interrupt
Let's
you.
do this. Let's do this. Jagoon, you got 1 minute, then we're closing out.
Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt you. I listened to you very
that's fine.
intently.
Yeah, go ahead.
And for what you have said, I have a lot of agreement with. But then what you said earlier, and I think it was yourself, and forgive me if I'm wrong.
That's fine.
When you spoke about the 3 African countries that were divorcing themselves from ECOWAS, and because they were, even though you've just underlined the fact that they have shown us an example about how to get rid of European hegemony. First, you get rid of the stool pigeon who is upsetting you. The stool pigeon being the African who has been put above your head to stand on your neck. Once you get rid of him, then you can face the European or Western hegemony from that place. And they showed the example in front of the whole planet. Us Africans looked at it and we didn't learn anything. We learned nothing. We just now want to say, oh, his military, and military is obviously wrong. It needs to be a civilian government. You see, all these talk and all these way we paraphrase things are all Eurocentric, which doesn't allow us to speak to ourselves directly. We are speaking like we know what we're talking about, yet we will come back and say the exact opposite of what we said just 10 minutes ago. And think that, no, bros, hear me out and be very plain with you.
I was just
You
trying to
see,
respond. Go
all
ahead.
I'm putting forward, my learning is much in this thing. But whatever people have to say, let them say it. But I know my learning is much. I'm not a young man. You understand? I'm older than any of you. That says nothing. What I appeal to is for real listening and understanding, because all these days that we are having today, they are immensely crucial in us making a better tomorrow and having some level of understandable legacy to hand down to the generation that's coming up from us. So we got to take our words very seriously. This is not an intellectual tennis match. This is life and death that we're talking about for real terms. And we may flippantly say that, oh, he's stupid, who is talking rubbish. You just read the comment section and see how many dunce people are there talking mess, but they can't come to the station and speak their truth. But we can always,
guys, we got to close out. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Like, share, subscribe.
Man like Diners.
Nigeria first. Next time, Nigeria first. No, we're always out here. My bad. All right, peace.